This is Straight Talk with Atlanta native Greg Fann, the Preacher Man, and his sidekick Shanan Jones. Frank discussions of issues affecting the ATL, Fulton County, the state of Georgia, the nation, and around the world. And now, here they are, live and in living color, the team of Jones and Fann, the Preacher Man.
Well, welcome again to another edition of Straight Talk. You know what? I'm gonna tell you something. You look good today,
Thank
son.
you, man.
You look
Thank
good
you.
today.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you look good. You looking just like a preacher should.
I want to do the traffic report now.
You look no traffic report today. Just because you were late.
No, I wasn't late. I wanted to do the traffic report. I was out there.
You were late for
if you would give me a traffic producer, I need a traffic producer. We're bringing traffic into Straight Talk.
Mabel, this is for Mabel Green.
Hey, Mabel Green.
Mabel watches the program, and this is what Mabel. Mabel said, "Let Shanan talk a little bit more." I said, "Shanan talk too much. If he get here on time,
Mabel, you see, my name is on the other side of the thing, so I get to say a few things, but that's about it. So I'm used to it. Maybe this is the quietest meeting I ever go in all day. Thank you, Mabel Green.
Hey, to those of you who watch Straight Talk, we appreciate your opinion. We appreciate your views. Hey, you can always call us at 404-308-0795, or you can email us at fan922@comcast.net if you'd like to be on the program. We got an interesting program for you today. I mean, very interesting. We'll have former State Representative Keisha Waite. She's going to be here to talk to us about that, the law, the flaws in the law as she see it, and as many of us see it. We have to educate people about this new law. But people don't really understand this new law and why we call it voter suppression. They don't understand why people talk about boycotting, because they're boycotting because of what? The new law. That is a suppressive law in itself. Okay, so then, and then Shannon, the other thing is we'll be talking about, we'll have Liz Cheney and from Joe's morning show. We're going to show a clip of that, of them talking about Liz Cheney. Morning show. And we're going to be talking about Liz Cheney and the fact that Mr. McCartney, Kevin, the minority leader, wants to get rid of her as the House chair of the city chair of that House Conference Committee, which, and we'll talk to you about what the House Conference Committee is and her role.
Senate Committee.
No, she's in the Congress.
She's in the Congress.
Yes.
McCarthy's in the Congress.
Yeah, both of them.
That's right. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Sometimes I mess up too. So
I'm just sitting up thinking, I don't know if we talking about Georgia or the Congress. It's all terrible right now.
It's terrible.
It's all terrible.
But they want to remove her because she is outspoken about this election, that they need to stop talking about it was stolen and buying into Donald Trump rhetoric.
Right.
So now they want to remove her. He's the minority leader and the minority whip.
And she's the third in line.
So they want to remove her from her position.
And would gonna put someone in that's less conservative than Liz Cheney, because Liz Cheney is actually more conservative than all. That's Dick Cheney's. That's Dick Cheney's daughter. So she is more conservative than any of them,
right?
Including McCarthy. But they gonna get rid of, and far more conservative than Donald Trump.
Well, my God! Let's not even talk about the lie. And
but that's what all this is about.
Well, we want to talk a little bit about Bob Barr and how he lied as Attorney General to make sure that people didn't get the truth out of the Mueller report in terms of that. Mueller did say that Trump did things that were not right and they were criminal. But Bob Barr moved to say no, he hadn't done anything wrong. But the U.S. federal judge had ruled that Bob Barr lied to her and lied to Congress. So that's going to be interesting. That's going to be very, very interesting. When somebody's lying and stealing the election, woo! Donald Trump did it. He did it. Now he wants to talk about this election was stolen. Well, brothers and sisters, that's because he couldn't steal it himself. That's why it was stolen.
So it's William Barr.
William Barr. Yeah, I think about Bob Barr.
Used to be here.
Yeah,
was he black?
Well, I'm gonna leave that alone.
His daddy wasn't his daddy. I'm just trying to say.
Okay, whatever you want to say, Shannon. I won't touch that. I can't touch that. I'm like MC Hammer.
And he went away.
We're gonna get right into our program today, and we're gonna start off with Keisha Waits, the former Representative Keisha Waits, and then we'll come in with Joe's Morning Show, Cliff and Joe Morning Show, and we'll talk more about what we just got to talk about. How about that?
About Bob Barr being black.
Well, we'll talk more and more and more. Don't you touch that down. Hey, share it with your Facebook friend. Share your Facebook friend and your YouTube family. We'll be right back after this brief time with Shanan E. Jones and yours truly, Greg Fann, the preacher man. All right. Here we are, you know, with former state representative Keisha Waits. And of course, Keisha is here with us, and we're glad to have you today right here on Straight Talk, Keisha. Now, Keisha, I want to talk to you. You know, I mean, you have been one of the most, I guess, political persons that I've met in my life. You constantly out there on the battlefield. You ran for many offices. You served in the State House. You've been a pillar in the community for a long time. And this, what we're seeing that's happening in our country today around this new law that was passed by your former colleagues under the Demon Dome. You know, that's why I call it the Demon Dome, that it was passed. And looking at the things that's happening with, you know, talking about the former president and the former attorney general cover up on the Russian hacking of that election. And now the thing with the Republican Party and all this hatred that's coming out toward people of color. So I want to hear your take on this new law, and what do you think about this new law that has been passed and how it's going to affect our community overall. So Representative Waits, it's on you. Oh well, I can still call you Representative Waits because you are a former representative. So Representative Waits, it's on you.
And Bishop Keisha is fine. Senate Bill 202 has the capacity to be very destructive. I do believe I lost you. Okay, you can hear me though.
I hear you very good.
Okay, I got you. Okay. So the issue that I see right now, Bishop, is that we got to look at the motivation and the background behind why Senate Bill 202 came to pass. 1.3 million Georgians requested absentee ballots. That's what this is about. 26% of the 5 million people that voted via absentee ballot. So my Republican friends see the writing on the wall, right? 65% of those that requested absentee ballots voted for Joe Biden. We have a gubernatorial election coming up next year. 30%, 34% of those voted for Trump. So what does that tell you? What that tells you is that Democrats overwhelmingly chose to vote absentee. So what you do, if you are on the football field and you're strategizing as the coach, you make it more difficult for folks to get down the field. And you do that through, and we're going to just run through. I'm only going to highlight, Bishop, there's 16 provisions in that bill that are toxic and deadly. However, there are 3 that I think are the most important that we should be paying attention to. The fact that you can't give out food and water, it's important, it is awful, but that's not the thing that I think you should care about. The thing that I think we should care about, Bishop, is the fact that if you now go to the wrong polling precinct, you know that previously you would be given a provisional ballot. That provision no longer exists. If you show up at the wrong polling precinct, Bishop, you will not be allowed to vote. 1. That is horrible. And that is on page, 72 of the bill. The bill's 98 pages, Bishop. In fact, I'm going to send you my talking points on this bill where I just kind of went through it and just picked out the meat of the bill. The second thing that is really crazy is drop boxes. There is a complete reduction in the drop boxes that are going to be situated, which here in Metro Atlanta and the major 5 counties is a big deal because the mail system for sending back absentee ballots is flawed. Right now, they're going to reduce the number of drop boxes and only make them available during business and work hours. It doesn't make logical sense for someone to do that. They're going to also place them inside of the election offices and facilities to monitor who is bringing them back. Second thing I think is terrible. So the third thing that I think is also important that we need to be paying attention to is the new requirements surrounding voter ID, right? Everybody doesn't have voter ID. We could all just go and make copies of it. But for some people who do not drive, we have a huge segment of the population who only use Lyft and Uber. We have an aging population of people. So right now, Bishop, we have time to get organized, to make sure that our folks have ID cards, to make sure that our folks have what is necessary to be successful, so that there will be no limitations to their capacity to go out and vote.
Keisha, what you make valid points in terms of those three things. One thing that I definitely want people to know and understand is also, Keisha, you know that in the past, when people went to vote and they showed their ID, there was no issue in terms of where you were registered and the ID you had that you showed, that they would go ahead and let you vote. But now, if your ID that you're showing in terms of where you say you live and where you register to vote, that you say you were there registered to vote at this place, but your ID say you live at this place, now you will not even be allowed to vote under this new law. So there are a lot of things that's going on that people need to know. They need to change their address to match their voters ID card, because if your ID says that, hey, listen, I live here now, and you register to vote over here, we're not letting you vote because you're not now legally a registered voter, because you don't live in the place you said that you live, so you cannot vote. That's one thing that people need to be made aware of too. And there are a lot of things in this thing in terms of shorting the time that when you can get your absentee ballot in and vote, and the number of days early voting. I mean, this law is suppressive very much so. Did you read the article in the Constitution that was written about when the Republican Party here in Fulton County or in Georgia held its meeting here, and Lindsey Graham came in to be the keynote speaker to raise money for the party? Absent from that banquet or that dinner, that fundraiser, were CEOs and various companies. They were not there. And then because they were not there, the chairman of the Republican Party said that the CEOs of these companies can kiss his you know what. But that's what he said, because there are companies who do not go along with this voter suppression bill, and because they know that people are going to be affected by it, and they don't go along with it. Though they're silent, though too many of them are silent about it. But that was a great stand when they said, we're not going to contribute money to your fundraiser, and we're not coming to your event. We won't sponsor it this time. And the Republicans are upset about it. But they created all of this. Now, you served in the legislators, and you know how the deals are cut and things that's going on up there. And I don't understand. This is what I don't understand, Keisha. See, I know you'd have said something if you would have been there, because you like me. You're a straight talker. You don't mind just saying what needs to be said. But how can this governor, who purged the role of elected officials during his race, how can this governor, who refused to recuse himself as the Secretary of State, who was in charge of his own election, have the audacity and the gall to sign a bill, and to sign a bill that will remove the Secretary of State from being a part of the committee to legitimate races, and to say, I want the House and the Senate to decide who will be these people on the committee that will now decide elections, and remove county boards of election from their duties. I mean, how could he have the audacity to even want to sign a bill knowing that he himself probably stole that election?
Bishop, it's interesting that you highlight that. because he is formally the Secretary of State.
Right.
I'm getting an echo for some reason right now.
Okay, let me just hold on for a second. Go on. Go
So
ahead on.
okay, so yeah, so the fact that he is formally the Secretary of State, which is really crazy, that he would even sign something like this. So I'm with you 100%. The other thing is this is also about self-preservation. He has a gubernatorial election coming up next year. You and I both know that he will be primary and probably won't survive his primary election. So the goal is to ensure that as many people as possible uh, have limitations or have restrictions to their capacity and access to the ballot. That's what this is about. I love the fact that you mentioned page 87. Runoff election periods will be shortened. They're going to be reduced. So this will make elections much more complex to manage. You also talked about something else. Um, Early voting access will be expanded in rural communities, but in more urban, dense communities, it's going to be reduced in more populous communities. So it's very apparent. And, I've heard people use the term Jim Crow, which I thought was very interesting, Bishop. But the reality is, this bill is clearly targeted at ensuring that we reduce the number of people who are participating in the democratic process. And I want to tell you something. This bill actually impacts Republicans, whites, just as much as it impacts African Americans as well. So they have to be careful, Bishop. You know what happens when you do things to harm other folks. Oftentimes there is a backlash and it has the opposite effect. And as a person of faith, I just believe righteousness will prevail.
With you, righteousness will prevail. And I appreciate you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to just come on Straight Talk, to just share your views and your opinion. Do you have anything you want to say closing as you close out?
Yes, this situation with Liz Cheney has been uh, awful. I can tell you that there's very little politically that I agree with her on whatsoever. But I do think it's something to note, Bishop, that this is the number 3 Republican woman in the House. She's serving in leadership. She didn't have to take this position. This is someone that already has a seat at the table of power. But for her to come out and to remind us of how dangerous it is to continue to spread the false narrative and lie that the election was stolen, it erodes our democratic system. And so I see Liz Cheney as not only a patriot, but I see her as someone that is, in my opinion, the type of leadership that we need. This is not about Democrat. This is not about Republican. This is about what is right. And it is my hope that you will start to see more Democrats and Republicans come together surrounding what is right versus whose party is in charge and who's running things.
Again, I want to thank you for coming and sharing, and you're absolutely right. Just because she's standing up for democracy and standing up for truth and to stop the lies, we want to applaud her for her stance on that. But we know we don't always agree, and we can agree to disagree. But she's right on this one, and we can agree with her, and justice will prevail. Thank you so much, former Representative Keisha Waits. You have a great day, and anytime you want to join Straight Talk with your opinion, we'd love to have you. God bless you.
I look forward to it.
Well, Representative Waits gave her opinion. I gave my opinion in terms of the laws and what the law is going to do and how it's going to hurt people. I'm sure that you have stuff that you might want to add to that in terms of the this new law. People want to still call it a bill, but it's a law now.
It's absolutely a law. I was out doing the traffic report when she was on. However, I clearly.
Well, what's going on out there in the traffic?
Oh, it's rough out there. You want to stay off the 20 and connect. But that's okay.
Is that coming up out of South Georgia?
No,
right, Eagle Landing and McDonald.
That's a whole other thing. We stayed off there because our drone didn't go that far.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, but they're doing considerable construction
Yes, sir.
over there on exit 48.
Yes, sir. Go ahead with your analysis of the paralysis in terms of this law.
Regarding this law, this is extremely serious. I really want to look at Major League Baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're Colin Kaepernick in Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
Major League Baseball stood up for me. They stood up for you. They stood up for our community. For me, the core of democracy is that we extend the space of hospitality and that we uphold the dignity of humanity. And when that humanity is threatened, we have to do everything that we can to defend one's humanity. And so to say that they could not read the bill or that they didn't understand the bill and all that is an absolute lie. Major League Baseball did a values vote. And in that values vote, they said we cannot bring our all-star game, our marquee game, to a state that would put a law like this. And so now it's 47 states that's doing it. So pretty soon, they're going to have to make a decision about it. But the silence around this stuff, man, is betrayal. And when I hear the governor say we need to attack Major League Baseball, it angers me because it's them saying, basically, forget the Negroes. We can do with our Negroes any way we want to do with them in the state of Georgia. But don't deprive us of our baseball. Don't deprive us of our dollars. You're taking $150 million out of Georgia. Don't deprive us of that. Stay out of our political business and bring your money and bring the show here. And Major League Baseball said no. And that is something that we really need to address. We really need to address that, because if we want other corporations and they need to speak up and say, we can't do business here. That's what Delta did. I'm going to shut up after this. That's what Delta did in the 1960s when they were going to be in Birmingham. But they said headquartered in Birmingham, but they said Birmingham is Birmingham. And so we can't do business in a climate of hate like this. You don't reward hate. You have to pull out of it. You have to shine a light on it. And you have to bring good and justice against evil and against hatred.
Well, that's a good analysis of the paralysis, and thank you so very much. And now we're going to move to Black History Facts. We're going to have a Black History Fact and by Mr. Lawson, Jerry Lawson. This is going to be interesting too. And then we're going to have a message about Juneteenth and the restorative justice program that the Solicitor General and others are going to have on June 10th. If you have a criminal record, you want to get expunged, misdemeanor charges, you might want to listen to this. Greg Fann, the preacher man, with Brother James Grooms and Black History Facts, right here on Straight Talk.
This is Jerry Lawson. Born December 1st, 1940, Gerald Anderson Lawson was inspired as a child by the works of Dr. George Washington Carver. The young, inquisitive, and energetic Lawson dabbled in electronics growing up, repairing television sets to make a little extra money on the side. After enrolling in Queens College in New York, Jerry Lawson developed an interest in computing, which in turn led him in the 1970s to Silicon Valley's famed Homebrew Computer Club. Being the only African-American member at the time, it was while in the computer club that Jerry Lawson interacted with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the duo who later went on to create Apple Computer in 1976. Being one of the few African-American engineers working in computing at the dawn of the video game era, this New York native pioneered the home video gaming industry in the 1970s with his creation of the Fairchild Channel F, the very first interchangeable home-based video game console, the precursor to Atari 2600, the original Nintendo, the original PlayStation, and the original Xbox. Jerry Lawson died April 9th, 2011. That's Gerald Lawson. They forget all about him, but we won't.
It's been Black History Facts with Brother James Groom right here on Straight Talk. Join us each and every Friday at 7 p.m. right here on YouTube and Facebook.
Republican Conference Chair Liz Cheney and whether the caucus will push her out of leadership. Axios posted audio of House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy on a hot mic yesterday criticizing Cheney ahead of an interview on Fox News. Here is what McCarthy said off air versus what he said live on air.
I think she's got real problems. I've had it with it's, I've lost confidence. Well, someone just has to bring a motion, but I assume that will probably take place.
There's no concern about how she voted on impeachment. That decision has been made. I have heard from members concerned about her ability to carry out the job as conference chair, to carry out the message. I haven't heard members concerned about her vote on impeachment. It's more concerned about the job ability to do and what's our best step forward that we can all work together instead of attacking one another.
Singing a different tune on the air, a spokesperson for Congresswoman Cheney put out a statement after McCarthy's interview saying, quote, "This is about whether the Republican Party is going to perpetuate lies about the 2020 election and attempt to whitewash what happened on January 6th. Liz will not do that. That is the issue."
Voters, if they refight 2020 in 2022. They can truthfully say that Democrats used lawsuits to exploit the pandemic to change the election rules in some states. They can also say Democratic judges on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court let Democrats get away with it. Democrats did a better job of exploiting the pandemic election rules than the GOP. But there's no evidence any of this was decisive, as Mr. Trump lost the popular vote in a rout and the Electoral College by a similar margin to what he won in 2016. Mr. Trump lost even as Republicans gained 12 seats in the House. The election was close, but not as close as others in American history. Republicans should find a way to speak this truth to voters in 2022 and quickly turn to running on an agenda for the future that will check Mr. Biden and his cradle-to-grave entitlement state. Purging Liz Cheney for honesty would diminish the party. And, Joe, it just goes back to our lead story and how serious it is, what this judge has said about the Trump presidency, about the Mueller report, that the president, with the help of the Attorney General, used the Mueller report to drum up hate, to foment anger, and it had all led up to January 6th, and, by the way, took the Republican Party hostage.
Right. When I was there, this is all we would be talking about. And we would be on the floor night and day talking about runaway government. They instead are talking about a woman with a lifetime 95% ACU rating, like me, by the way, who's simply telling the truth about the 2020 election. This is madness.
Yeah, and not only does she have a 95% ACA rating, she has a 95 or 97% rating voting with Donald Trump. So it's not like she was this outlier. But Mika has given us the image here. Liz Cheney is the rescuer. She's come and she's found the hostages, and she's saying, "Come on, follow me out of the building. Come on, I've got away." And they're sitting there going, "No, we want to stay. We like it." In fact, bad rescuer, bad person who's trying to save us from ourselves. And that's where we are. You're absolutely right, Joe. The party, instead of taking time to put down on the carpet for the American people what the spending means, what the programs that are being proposed mean, putting their alternatives and giving a conservative, a viable conservative governing choice to the American people, are instead fixated on Dr. Seuss and kicking the only female in leadership who is more conservative than most of the men who's kicking her out, right? kicking her out of the game.
Yeah.
And so this is their new reality here. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, and I appreciate they sort of give me, hey guys, this is your playbook. This is your playbook. And yet and still they refuse to go down that road that will free them of Trump. Instead, you've got Ted Cruz going down to try to do his version of Kevin McCarthy, right? And sit there and have tea and crumpets while the party's burning. So here we are. Liz Cheney will be the tip of the spear that will be their undoing. They will probably oust her, and then they'll elevate a woman who, as Pelosi noted, is one who's more compliant and agreeable to Trump. And they think that they will have won that battle. They won't.
Well, I tell you, Shannon, I love our program because, people talk about the information that we're putting out that people who they're not getting, they don't see. And the clip from the Joe Morning Show and how they did an analysis of the horizon. That's what's trending today. Yeah. It's what's trending. And I think the biggest thing that I think that came out of that for me, there's several things, but what was more telling was the bar lie to the federal judge about the Russian hacking and the Mueller report. William Barr. Yeah, thank you. I said Barr, but we don't want to go back there. We're going to leave that where it is. All right. So anyway, William Barr, his line to the federal judge, to the Congress, that there was nothing criminal done, that the report that Mr. Mueller did not indicate anything that was improper or wrong. And that was the biggest lie. That was the beginning of the lie, as they said, in terms of the hatred, building the hatred. And that it's a shame that the party still want to go along with that lie. He's no longer the president, but they want to still go along with that lie and then turn around and say that this election was stolen from him when he stole clearly the election that he won. And it's sad that they want to come against Mrs. Cheney, or Congresswoman Cheney, who is an ultra conservative, to deal with getting rid of her, talking about an election and changing election laws across the country because they could not outdo the Democrats in their playbook in terms of this last election. The Democrats, as she said, just outplayed them.
They don't have a popular agenda.
They don't. They don't have an agenda that people want to rally behind. Right. The only agenda they have that people want to rally behind is hatred. Right. Hatred and suppression of people who look like me and you, and people who are of other hues and persuasion other than white Caucasian.
Absolutely. What this Republican Party is like, this one, is like locking the doors, filling the mall up with people, locking the doors of the mall so you can't leave the mall, going into the food court and shutting down all the restaurants except the worst restaurant in there, and trying to force people to eat at the worst restaurant, and there is no burgers, no chicken, no this, that, and that. It's just the worst restaurant in the world that nobody ever went to, and that's the only restaurant they're gonna keep open. They're literally trying to force people into, well, they're not trying to force us, they're trying to limit our vote in order to make their terrible policy taste good. And if it don't taste good, they're telling you, you just don't know culinary. You don't know culinary. You haven't read the bill. Your palate is not trained enough to understand this. That this manure burger is really it's the best burger. It's a delicacy. It's a delicacy.
It's a Mondo burger. It's a Mondo burger.
Manure burger. You just there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. The Mondo burger.
We made sure we use the choicest manure we could find.
The Mondo burger. Mondo burger.
People don't want the manure burger. So we have to do what we can before we're going to starve everybody to activate. They're going to look at that manure burger and say, ooh, I sure would like to eat a piece of that manure. It's absolutely insane. And the issue is this. Here's the issue.
Tell me what the issue is.
Not bigger than, But before we go into the voter suppression piece,
Yeah.
the question is, because you were talking about this a lot, you know, about the dictatorship.
Right.
The question is has the spell that Donald Trump put the Republican Party and racists united from all over this country that were under rocks, has this destroyed America for the duration of this nation, or for a very long period, or is this something that is going to pass through the system? Is this a little kidney stone that we can pass out, or is this going to be a major hindrance that is really altered in this country for the worse, and it's going to go on permanently? That's the question that they need to deal with the dangerous stuff that they're doing. When the DA can, when the Attorney General can put out a report like that, it's not laughable. It's dangerous.
Well, Shanan, I'm going to share this with you. You're a minister, I'm a minister. And I want to conclude by saying to you, as we're looking at Straight Talk, when Jesus was taken before Pilate by his accusers who lied on him, who lied to say that he was telling the people not to pay taxes to Caesar, who lied on him in terms of heresy, and then called him an insurrectionist. Said he was an insurrectionist. He's been stirring up stuff all the way from Galilee all the way to Jerusalem, stirring up people, right? Stirring up people. But he was telling people about the message of the kingdom of God and eternal life. But he was stirring up people. And they were angry because he was attacking their position in terms of their economic gain. And they really became furious when he ran them out of the temple. So they had to do what they could do to destroy Jesus in some kind of way. So they came up with the big lies, listen to what I'm saying, y'all, the big lies to get rid of Jesus. They called him an insurrectionist, they called him a treasonist, they called him all these things to get rid of Jesus. They took in the Pilate said, who is he? Is he a Galilean? Is he a Jew? Well, he's a Jew. Well, take him to Herod. Herod is the king of the Jews. Take him to Herod. Let Herod launch the charges. They took him to Herod. They lied to Herod. Herod bought into the lies. And then Herod said to Pilate, we want to kill him. We want to get rid of him. Well, Pilate still didn't want to do nothing with Jesus. He still didn't want to do nothing with Jesus. He said, listen, you got Barabbas, who is a known insurrectionist, in jail today for trying to overthrow the Roman government, trying to overthrow the government, killed people. He's in jail. And here's Jesus. Here's Jesus. Who do you want to let go? Jesus of Barabbas. The people cried out, Jesus. Kill Jesus, crucified Jesus. The loud voices, they bought into the lie to get rid of Jesus. They bought the loud voices. Listen to what I'm saying. The loud voices got louder and louder. Crucify him, get rid of Jesus who had done nothing. But they bought into the big lie. And so Pilate was left with no choice. Because there were people, Shanan, that were there who did not want that to happen to Jesus. There were people there like Mrs. Liz Cheney who was speaking up, but her voice was overshadowed by the Kevin McCarthy's, the Lindsey Grahams, the Ted Cruz, who was saying, get rid of her. She's got to go. We don't want to hear what she's saying. Let's silence her voice. And so they silenced the voice of the many, and the crowd got louder and louder. Crucify him. Now, to show you that there was one who cared, his name was Joseph, who was a part of the council, who asked for his body and put him in his own tomb and buried him there. So what I'm saying to you guys today, that we're looking at this and listening to this, and the scripture about witnessing to this, people buy into the big lie. They buy into the big lie. And the whole talk now is about elections. It's about elections. It's not about feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, any of that. It's all about, from the Republican side now, it's all about We need to change the election laws. And anybody who ain't with us, they got to be against us, because what Mr. Trump said, the election was stolen, so we got to change election rules, how people will vote all over this country. 46 states, all over this country. We got to do it so that we can continue to perpetuate the lie that the election was stolen. But we know the election that was stolen, it was the election that he won, that the Russians had the election so that he could win. And when he couldn't win this time, then everything else was election fraud, election fraud. And Shannon, the part that bothers me more than anything is his own federal judges, who he appointed, didn't find anything wrong with the election, but yet they want to keep talking about this election, that was fraud in this election. And we want to continue to be silent, like many people was when they crucified Jesus. When we talk about the boycott of the company Coca-Cola, Delta was silent. They did not speak up until after the law had passed, and people were saying that we're going to boycott you, we're going to do this because you're silent.
I spoke to a group of CEOs at Yale today, and I challenged them in the same way, to say to them that the silence is absolute betrayal. And
it is.
If you stay silent, pretty soon they're going to turn around on you, and you're not going to be able, because you're going to turn around and have your own government relations campaigns when they start taking away tax breaks and whatnot from Coke or doing this. You're going to be saying, people, will you help Coca-Cola? Will you, if you love Coke, will you reach out to your legislator and say, don't do this because Coca-Cola gives this amount of money to this program and that program, and they do that. And so we're asking for your support now to turn around and come back and help Coke, or come back and help Delta, or come back and help us because of the foundation work that we do. But the question becomes, when we were under attack,
where were you?
Where were you? You stayed silent on it, or you gave, as I said today, some milquetoast statement with no bite to it, with no teeth to it, so you could check the box and say, well, we said something about that.
Right. Well, if you think about it, and you think about it from a biblical standpoint, his disciples was there, those who had followed him, people who he had healed, people who he had fed. There were people that were there. They could have spoke out. And let me tell you something. A closed mouth will never be fed. If we know that this is an ingest, our young people, I applaud them. I want to see them on the battlefield. I want to keep saying it. I want them to keep being about it, because we cannot be quiet, because then we become compliant, but then we become complicit, because silence means consent. So you consenting to what you know that is wrong. They knew it was wrong, but they went along with it anyway. And some of them, no doubt, looked around and seen who was saying it, and they started saying, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. And brothers and sisters, we can't allow this to happen in this time, this day. But God is still yet what? In control. Because even all that they did, Shanan, this the preacher in me, even after everything they had did, that's who I am, Greg Fann, the preacher man. After everything they had did, Shanan, they didn't realize who they were doing it to. All the stuff that they're doing, they don't realize who they're doing it to. They're doing it to the children of God. It is my Father world. They could not keep him in the grave, because as he promised, he got up, and he did. And whatever they're trying to do to us, as the young man who we saw, Mr. Jerry Lawson, who was the inventor of many, many things, he was a black man. They don't tell his story, but we got to tell our own story, because you press us down, but guess what? We're going to rise again, we're going to rise again, we're going to rise again, because we are resilient people.
That's right.
We're resilient people.
What Jesus said, he said, when I was naked.
That's right.
When I was hungry.
When I was hungry.
When I was in prison.
When I was.
When Jesus were you naked? When were you sick? When were you in prison? And if you've done it unto the least of these, my brother, you've done it also unto me. So they're still crucifying Jesus today. And what we, as Dr. King said, we who are trying to redeem the soul of America, we are telling America and American corporations that these governors and these legislators and these CEOs who remain silent, you are crucifying the Lord all over again, because you've done it. If you've done it unto the least of these, my brethren and my sisters,
you've done it unto me.
You've done it also unto me. So the question is, were you there when they crucified?
So you know you got two preachers here, I'm telling you. And when you get one preacher get to preaching, the other preacher gets stirred up. He get to preaching. My Lord. Hey, listen, but the problem of it is, Shannon, you know, and I know, their God is green. He's the God of green. They serve Pharaoh God. We serve the true and living God.
A whole lot of them down the north side with that green God. That green God don't help you when you got a brain tumor. The green God don't help you when your day comes.
It doesn't help you. And that day is coming to all of us. Listen, we thank you so much for joining us today on Straight Talk with yours truly, Greg Fann, the Preacher Man, and Shannon. Each of you would like to be a guest. All you got to do is email us at fan922 comcast.net, or you can call me at 443-080795. We had comments last week from individuals commenting, and some people commented on our YouTube channel. You can do that too. But you need to give us your name, because sometimes people got hashtags and we don't know who those hashtags are. Yeah, we don't know. You don't know that.
I don't, but I want to thank you for watching.
Well, thank you for watching, and thank you for your comment.
Whatever you're trying to offer, we married, so we don't want that. But anyway, thank you, Sexy Red at these points. But tell us your name, your Christian name, if you could, or your Islamic name, or whatever it is, and we can talk to you, as a person and not as some thing out there.
Okay, well, we welcome your comments. And last week we had quite a few comments. No, they didn't, but they do today. But they'll send anything to anybody. The devil is busy. But the devil is a lie. He's a lie. But thank you so much again for watching Straight Talk with yours truly, Greg Fann, the Preacher Man. Keep those comments coming. Keep them coming. And just let us know who you are, please. Please, thank you so very much. Until next week, it's what? Straight Talk!
Want to be a guest on Straight Talk? Email Greg Fann at FANN922 at comcast.net or call 404-308-0795. Join us again for another episode of Straight Talk with Shanan Jones and Greg Fann, the Preacher Man.